18th day, upper wind month, 1 CE, 1300 hours. What can I say? A wisp of frigid air raised the hairs on Liam's arms. The source of that frigid air, a maw lined with teeth as long as and probably sharper than knives, hovered less than a meter in front of his face. This is the third retake in 2 weeks, but you've still only managed to score 60%. It's all right, isn't it? This is the optional test anyway. That's a poor attitude to harbor, Liam, Hegenmill said. If the director was here. Liam swallowed. His gaze went past the frost dragon's snout to the blackboard behind him. On the right side of it, something that could only be described as a crater sent a myriad of cracks through the wall. Orphanage director Yuri Alpha left it there during a classroom lesson some time ago. The director claimed that it was an accident, but no one could grasp how one could nearly punch a hole in a thick limestone wall by accident. Hegenmill's turquoise eyes dilated. He let out a frosty sigh. If you feel that way, why do you keep challenging this exam? Because my friends all took it. They all beat him, too. Most of them got at least a 70 on their first try. Because it's good to broaden your knowledge, Liam said. The assistant professor's eyelids narrowed. A low growl rose from the frost dragon's throat. You shouldn't offer empty reasons, Liam, Hegenmill said. Furthermore, knowledge is not to be underestimated. Liam turned his gaze downward. That was the problem with frost dragons. Their senses were so keen that they could sense what was going on inside of someone's body. They could see, smell, hear and feel the world far better than any other race could. They even had senses that humans didn't have. Once they understood how any one race worked, it was nearly impossible for a member of that race to hide their feelings and reactions from them without suitably strong methods of concealment. One remedial lesson later, Liam staggered out of the schoolhouse of the Azure Sky, Iron Fist Institute for Promising Young Children. Oh, you survived. Calasiel's head snaked out from the shadow of the orphanage wall. The juvenile frost dragon examined him curiously. Hey Carly, Liam said as he walked by, what are you doing here? I was wondering if my brother would eat you for failing 3 times in a row. Carly silently padded up to walk alongside him. Those tests are so easy, why do you keep having to retake them? Calasiel had also taken the test. She came out of it with a perfect score, just like Liam's sister. You're only saying that 'cause you're a frost dragon. What's wrong with being a frost dragon? Do you know what a potato is? Of course I do, Carly replied. A potato is a potato. Where do potatoes come from? Liam asked. The frost dragon fell behind Liam to squeeze past a troll merchant's wagon. She sniffed at its contents as they went by. Potatoes are food, so humans probably farm them. How? Like how the quagga raise lizards. There are probably vast herds of potatoes roaming the empire, raised by human farmers. Liam frowned at the mental image. Frost dragons had perfect memories, but their heads worked funny. Calasiel could read a book once and recite it from memory word for word 10,000 years later, but whether she understood what she was reciting was something else entirely. Wrong. What? Why, you're just lying because you want to be right. Why would I lie about potatoes? Abstract ideas and associations without experiences were crazy hard for frost dragons. Often, it was impossible. This, of course, meant that she either did perfectly on tests or ended up worse than someone who had just answered randomly because she tried to match her own experiences to the questions. Potatoes were food. Dragons ate meat. Thus, since Calasiel had never seen a dug-up potato plant before, imagining them as a herd of animals made the most sense to her. Most people would say that made frost dragons dumb. But that wasn't true at all. The way that their minds worked made them super good at the things that they regularly did. The more they learned and the older they got, the better they were at everything that they became accustomed to. At least until something changed from what they thought they knew. Oh, I found one I think you'd like, Calasiel said. Found one what? Half a block away, walking in the opposite direction. Liam peered towards the place Calasiel indicated, spotting a tall, slender girl around his age with dark brown hair that hung past her shoulders. He turned his gaze forward, but it stuck to the girl again. Why are you following me, anyway? That's a good question. Habit, I guess? With that, the frost dragon turned into a nearby alley and scaled the city's inner wall. Her scaly tail vanished into the frozen aviary. For the past few months, Liam, Say and Caliciel went to school together. Well, it was more that they left school together since Liam and Say had been living at the orphanage since last spring. When the frost dragon wasn't working, they wandered around the city after classes, looking for new and interesting things. This was probably weird since frost dragons were supposed to be solitary in nature. Caliciel, however, claimed to be following in the footsteps of one of her elder half-sisters, Hegemon's younger sister, who was supposedly strong and all-around amazing. That was her reasoning at the start, at least. Say was the most successful kid in class, so Caliciel chose her to follow around and learn about the city. Somewhere along the way, they had become a group that people recognized, including Caliciel. Liam followed the fancy promenade running through the central district of the city. Some people were watching the adventurous spa at their training hall, but he ignored them and kept going. He made his way past the maids and footmen working around the district and exited out the other side. After zigzagging through a half-dozen blocks, he arrived at a quiet merchant inn. He opened the door. A hearty aroma wafted out to greet him. Liam made his way to the far corner of the tavern, where he found the person he was supposed to meet in a softly lit booth along the wall. "Yo, kiddo, looks like you failed again." Liam sat down across from a blonde-haired woman with coral eyes. She wore a foreign outfit over her curvy, yet fit figure. Her name was Tyra, a ninja who worked for the Sorceress Kingdom. Around midwinter, Lady Shiltier had put Tyra in charge of Liam and Say. The woman was responsible for training them into some sort of agent for the Ministry of Transportation. They were supposed to be inspectors or investigators, but Liam was pretty sure that inspectors and investigators weren't trained to do what Liam and Say were being trained to do. "Did you wait long?" Liam asked. "About an hour." Listening into the Windflower crew helped pass the time, though. Exasperated sighs rose from the booth behind Tyra. "Or, why so serious?" Tyra grinned. "I'm a spy." "You guys are spies. This whole tavern is full of spies." Spies are 100% okay in the Sorceress Kingdom. The whole tavern being full of spies wasn't an exaggeration. Being a spy wasn't a crime in the Sorceress Kingdom, nor did the Sorceress Kingdom do anything about them. In the end, the entire intelligence community said fuck it, and the Midnight Mantle transformed into a den of information brokers, intelligence agents and other related vocations that one might find in a story. There were agents from as far as the City-State Alliance, and even the Sorceress Kingdom's allies had people in the establishment. Werther Kilry, the proprietor of the Midnight Mantle, took the strange turn in stride. He was in the process of renovating the inn, proofing the rooms against eavesdropping and divination. The tables were made more private and the employees of the establishment were retrained. The Midnight Mantle was probably the only inn in the region where the staff didn't say a word upon one's entry. They didn't approach patrons unless they were called for. People still hired its rooms for normal purposes, but they were more often than not used for private dealings. As a result, the Midnight Mantle had become one of the busiest inns in Erantle. It was a bonanza of information from across the region, a marketplace that traded in commodities of a different sort. Werther was even considering purchasing the neighboring buildings to expand his business. Liam placed his hands on the table, slowly moving his fingers. "We moving yet?" Tyra rested her chin in one hand, the fingers of her other moving in response. "Yep, got the green light." "Green light?" "Founder picked it up from somewhere. Means we got the go-ahead." The founder Tyra referred to was Ijarnia, a legendary ninja who was a member of the 13 Heroes. According to Tyra, there were all sorts of weird terms that came into common use at that time. "When do we go?" "Sundown. Transport will be in the harbor." "What do we bring?" "Got supplies for the operation already. They brought local clothes for us." "We'll be there." "Want lunch?" Tyra asked. "My treat." Liam looked up from the table. Tyra had a warm smile on her face. For someone who had supposedly carried out thousands of assassinations, starting from when she was younger than Liam, she was a remarkably friendly person. Some thought it was an act, but he was pretty sure that it wasn't. She just cared for the people under her like a big sister. Ijarnia was an infamous organization known throughout the region, but, to Tyra, it was her precious family. A legacy that was passed down through the generations to her. "I have to go and get Say," Liam answered. "Then we'll have him pack something up for the two of you," Tyra said. 15 minutes later, Liam left the midnight mantle with 2 meals wrapped in brown paper. He stared at the packages as he made his way over to the central plaza. Their life now was so different from where they grew up. They lived in an orphanage paid for by the Sorcerer King. The food was good, they never went hungry, and they had a warm and safe place to sleep. People on the streets didn't walk around like they were scared something might happen to them. Even little girls could wander around at night free of worries. At first, he thought that maybe it was Facet Town that was screwed up. Their job in Roble showed that the rest of the world was more like Facet Town, so it was probably the Sorceress Kingdom that was special. They didn't even look down on the fact that he was an orphan kid who had to grow up rough. Instead, they accepted him for what he was and gave him work to do. The sound of a choir drifted over the central plaza as he drew closer to the Iranthal Cathedral. He walked by the Magician Guild and the Adventurer Guild, eyeing the merchant stands displaying magic items and equipment across from them. He stopped at one that had display cases filled with scrolls. A woman in clothing from the Empire came over. "Is there something I can help you with, young man? Do you have any invisibility scrolls?" Liam asked. "We do," the woman answered, "but what do you plan on using them for?" Liam turned and walked away. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw the woman frown slightly. A lot of wizards didn't like rogues. They actually didn't like anyone who didn't work for their magic. Sorcerers learned magic by grasping it with their senses, which wizards didn't consider proper study. Rogues and bards were even worse in their eyes. They had the ability to trick scrolls, wands and other caster restricted magic items into working for them, skipping all of the hard work that magic casters put into learning their craft. "Good afternoon, Liam." He stopped in front of the cathedral, nodding at the acolyte who had greeted him. "Hey, Max." Max, who had no last name, was an orphan from the city. Max didn't even know if his real name was Max, but since everyone called him that, he decided to stick with it. Unlike Liam and Say, who had been taken in by the Azure Sky, Iron Fist Institute for Promising Young Children, Max had been taken in by the cathedral and was in training to be a cleric. "A squire will chase you out with a warhammer again if you bring food inside." Max eyed the packages in Liam's hands. "But I see you guys eating in there all the time." "Not during services we don't," Max replied. "Say's in the choir so she can't eat right now anyway." Liam checked the time. There were still 30 minutes left until the early afternoon service was over. He went over to sit in the shade of the cathedral entrance, watching the people in the plaza. The merchant from before was handing over some scrolls to a man in a brown robe. "Is the temple selling stuff yet, Max?" Liam asked. "Are you kidding?" Max answered, "We still don't have enough mana to keep up with all of our followers." "But you have like 10 times the people as before." "Yeah, and it's not enough. We started short. All the new people are acolytes and squires like me, anyway. We can't make anything good." MMH. Liam's training made extra sure to drill the importance of magic items into him. The problem was that magic items were hard to get in Iranthal. Locally made stuff was mostly snapped up by the Adventurer Guild. People from the Empire came too, but their goods were expensive and their merchants asked stupid questions. The choir started to sing again, marking the end of the service. Liam got up and brushed himself off, watching the men and women stream out of the cathedral. A few minutes after the last of the temple-goers trickled out, Say appeared. "Over here," Liam called out. His sister came over, an instrument case at the end of one sleeve of her choir uniform. Every day, Say attended school in the morning, performed as part of the cathedral choir in the afternoon and trained with Ijania in the evening. "What did Tyra say?" she asked. "We're leaving today," Liam answered. "We have to be at the harbor by the evening. Do you need to do anything before then?" "Not really. I'll let the priests know that I'll be away for work until." "How long are we going to be gone for?" "Dunno," Liam shrugged. "It's supposed to be a big job, so at least as long as the last." For their last job, they were sent to help make a certain sequence of events work to achieve a specific result. There was a schedule and they knew roughly what to do, plus some things had been arranged for them. Their new job was completely open-ended and they had no idea what sorts of missions they would be sent on. They were only supposed to ask questions if it had to do with completing their missions, and they only knew what they were going to do after they were handed their orders. They ate lunch in the main plaza and then Say dragged him into the cathedral to attend the late afternoon service. After that, he waited at the entrance to the cathedral's stables while his sister changed out of her choir uniform. Two familiar figures came down the street, their plate armor gleaming in the afternoon sun. Vicar Aspasia, Liam lowered his head in greeting. Sister Alessia. I hope the day finds. What's that smell? An indescribable odor rose from one of the two women. Sister Alessia, who usually smiled, was wearing a very frowny frown, so it must have been her. Let us not ask, yes? She said. It's the result of our adamantite rank exam, Vicar Aspasia smiled. Sister Alessia's olive eyes slid over to give Vicar Aspasia a look that probably shouldn't be cast at a vicar. Liam checked below their gorgets, finding orichalcum tags still dangling from their necks. Apparently, he wasn't the only one failing at tests today. What's that smell? Say appeared from the stable entrance. The inside of a giant rodent's mouth, Vicar Aspasia said. What? A giant, talking rodent, that she was. Do not start talking like the thing now. She was huge and floofy, the vicar said, and strangely polite. I would have rather spent my time petting her, but we had to fight her for our adamantite rank exam. What happened during the fight? Liam asked. She grabbed Sister Alessia with her tail and stuffed her in her mouth, then she chased me all over the room. The battle was one-sided. Ridiculous, Sister Alessia put on a disgruntled look. Why does a rodent with a 4-meter-long body have a 20-meter-long tail? The tail was broad and harder than steel. I do not know how she can even move properly. Something kept banging against my armor while I was in her mouth, too. Getting chewed on by a giant rodent didn't seem like the exciting life of exploration and discovery that the Adventurer Guild advertised. Liam was glad he had a normal government job. Sister Alessia dragged herself into the cathedral. Vicar Aspasia parted with Liam and Say with a smile and friendly word. Do we need to pack anything? Say asked. We're going to be there for a long time. They said they have stuff prepared for us, Liam answered. There's even clothes. Let's go before we're late. Liam left the plaza with Say, going down the street to Irantal's front gate. He eyed the instrument case in her sister's left hand. You're bringing your loot? I doubt they'll be packing an instrument, Say replied. If they don't want me to take it, I can send it back. Better than needing to come back and get it. Say's skills as a bard were invaluable the last time they went out on a job. They had been dumped in the countryside of Roblé with their orders and little else. They had worn clothes and magical brooches to keep them from dying of exposure, but they weren't allowed to bring any food, money, tools, or weapons. She had them join one of the streams of refugees heading towards the port city of Remian and went to work right away. She sang and told stories for food and everything else they needed, gathering information at the same time. If it had just been him there, he would have had to do odd jobs to get by. It would have been tough since everyone was looking for work. The customs officials at Irantal's southern gate checked them for goods before letting them through. Not far from the gate was a gravel lot where a half-dozen wagons were parked. They climbed onto one with a call-in harbor sign on it and the Solita took them down the road. Did you learn anything new about the Draconic Kingdom? Liam asked. Not much, Say sighed. Just more stories. Didn't you say that the queen there is descended from a dragon? Yeah. It still doesn't sound right, but everyone seems to think it's true. How did that even work? He tried to imagine a frost dragon getting married to a human, but he couldn't figure out what happened after that. I wonder what she looks like. Do you think we'll meet her? She's a queen, Say told him. We're not going to randomly run into her on the street. The Sorcerer King walks around on the street. The most we'll probably see around are some nobles. His sister rolled her eyes. It's a kingdom, so there should be plenty of those around. Were the nobles dragons too? Say frowned at him as if she knew what he was thinking and thought it was dumb. Anyway, she said. All the stories say the same thing, but they don't say anything useful. The Draconic Kingdom gets raided all the time by beastmen. It's like they've been at war forever. So, what? Liam said, they just fight every day? More like get eaten every day, Say replied. Did that mean he would get to fight, too? His trainers in Ijania were teaching him how to fight, but their last job didn't have any fighting at all. He was almost like an errand boy while Say did most of the work. Say's look returned. I hope you're not thinking of getting into fights, she said. Why not? The trainers said I was stronger than the usual kid off the street. Beastmen are strong, Liam. They're not like city people or villagers. They're like ogres with fur and claws and big teeth. If there's any fighting, the adults will probably do it. Liam sighed, drawing one of his daggers and working it in his hand. He had already killed plenty of things. Well, practice things. An unlimited amount of real targets could be summoned for them to train against, so he just practiced and practiced and practiced. The more he practiced, the stronger he got. He got better at a whole bunch of things at the same time just by practicing how to fight. It was a lot easier than studying the stuff they tried to teach him at the orphanage. Don't you want to fight? Liam asked. They trained you in combat, too. Why would I want to fight? His sister answered, I can do way more things without fighting than I can by fighting. I don't think you can do any of those way more things when a beastman is trying to eat you. Say glowered at the dagger in Liam's hand. In an upfront fight, Say was about even with him. If Liam fought like assassins were taught to fight, it would be a lot harder for her. Still, that meant she could beat up most grown men pretty easy. Despite being able to, she tended to avoid doing things that would lead to fights. If anything, she used her strength and toughness to take abuse. Just like with the jealous maid in Viscount Sance's household, she could invite violence and use it to make people feel sorry for her or make others look bad. Little did anyone she drew into her performances know that, as a bard, she could just heal herself when she was done doing whatever she was trying to do. Their wagon rolled through the entrance of Corlin Harbour, following a ramp down into the town centre and stopping in a lot near the front of the town hall. 3 other wagons were parked there. One of them went all the way to the town on the Theocracy border. Another went to the town near the Imperial border. The last went all the way to Croston in the west. The Solita waited for the people waiting for its wagon to get on before heading back to Erantal. Liam looked around the plaza, watching the evening crowds go about their business. Corlin Harbour was probably one of the nicest-looking places in the Sorceress Kingdom. Its atmosphere was distinctly different from Erantal. Part of it was because it wasn't as crowded. Corlin Harbour was about half the size of Erantal, but only had a third of the people. There was a sense of space that couldn't be found in the city, giving it a refreshing and relaxed air. The people all looked content and friendly, and, at the same time, everyone carried themselves as if there was some grand purpose in their lives. It wasn't a place where people simply lived from day to day. It was a place that felt like it was going somewhere and everyone knew it. I still can't get over how huge the temple complex is, Say said. You'd think the cathedral grounds in the city would be bigger. Well, the country has more space, Liam replied. Sister Alessia said that Countess Corlin set aside that huge area specifically for the temple and all of its stuff. Not only did the town have a big temple, but there was also a school and university for the faith of the Six in the Sorceress Kingdom, which included accommodations for all of its staff and students. Sister Alessia said that it would eventually train hundreds of acolytes and squires every year to meet the needs of the human population. Wanna get dinner before we head down? We just ate 3 hours ago. That definitely wasn't something Say would have said last spring. They walked out of the town center, following the highway until they reached the ramp down to the harbor. A group of familiar faces were gathered at the waterfront near the covered dry docks, unloading crates from several wagons. Tyra grinned and waved them over in a very unassassin-like way. Looks like you made it in one piece, she said. Were we supposed to run into trouble? Say asked. Not really, Tara answered. Force of habit. Just used to new agents like you two getting intercepted and killed on the way to a job once in a while. Guess that'd be weird since we're working for this country. She said it in such a light-hearted way, but Liam was pretty sure she wasn't joking. For all of her warmth, Tyra and the rest of Ijania had lived a life in the shadows until recently. With so many of the organization's combatants headed to the Draconic Kingdom, he would finally get to see them in action. Did you let Director Alfie know that you were headed out? Tyra asked. Say looked at Liam. Liam looked away. Liam flinched at his sister's ire. Now they had to go back to the orphanage. Lucky for you I let her know. Tyra's eyes sparkled with amusement. I had to sign a field trip permission form though. Did Lord Demiurge have to do that the last time? He sighed in relief. Liam didn't know about any sort of permission form, but it looked like they would still be able to go. Do we get to know what we're doing yet? Liam asked. Not yet, Tyra answered. We'll be briefed on the other side. But before that, we're going on a spooky little trip. 18th day, Upper Wind Month, 1 CE, 2000 hours. Yeah. Shake it, boss. Tyra danced on the main deck of Ruin's Wake. The Grandmaster of Ijarnir was adorned in garb from the Draconic Kingdom, which consisted of baggy pants, a low-cut blouse that exposed her shoulders, and a crimson sash that snugly embraced about her waist. A scarf of opaque purple silk swirled as she twirled and wove her graceful form to the light melody of Say's lute. Rhythmic clapping and stomping from the ninjas around the deck accompanied the tune. Behind her transparent veil, her coral eyes shone over flushed cheeks and a bright grin. She seemed to be enjoying herself as much as her cheering and whistling subordinates. It wasn't what one would expect of an organization of notorious assassins, never mind their leader, or was it? In Tyra's movements, Liam could see bits of the combat training that he and Say had been drilled in. All of her movements were part of a deadly dance, one that had ended the lives of thousands over her bloody career as the most renowned contract killer in the region. It was a dance that anyone would find dazzling, but one that only those in the same trade could truly appreciate. Liam's gaze continued to follow her, at least until he had to hobble away in embarrassment. He adjusted his pants as he looked over the starboard railing of the huge ghost ship. Beyond the railing was a vast sea of fog that churned under a cloudless night sky. Liam peered down into the milky mists, trying to catch a glimpse of glowing crimson gazes looking up from the wasteland far below. Yo! Something hit Liam in the back, sending him over the railing with a startled shriek. A hand grabbed his ankle. Tyra lifted him back up. Her thighs showed through the material of her pants as they came into view of his swaying vision. Some beastman's gonna eat you at this rate, she said. I wasn't even sneaking around. Tyra casually tossed Liam into the air over her shoulder. He landed lightly on the deck and rose to his feet. Are we going to fight beastmen? He asked. Who knows? Tyra turned around, looking out at the scenery. But with what we've loaded, you'd think we're off to war. The sheen of sweat on her back glistened in the moonlight. Liam swallowed, his gaze tracing down her toned figure. Someone slapped him in the back of the head. But they're at war, right? Say appeared at Liam's side. The Draconic Kingdom's always fighting the Beastmen. They're being raided, Tyra replied, but they're not at war. But they're getting attacked all the time. Liam furrowed his brow. How is that not being at war? Tyra turned and leaned against the railing. She crossed her arms over her midriff as she regarded him. If a village ranger goes into the forest to hunt or forage food, Tyra asked, did the country the village is in declare war on the people in the forest? No, Say replied, but the beastmen are hunting people. The ranger's still taking stuff that those living in the forest need to survive, Tyra told them. If he's a jerk and doesn't leave enough behind for everyone else, then the denizens nearby resort to raiding. If they happen to raid human territory, the humans will believe that the raiders are attacking without provocation. If they have the money, they'll hire mercenaries and assassins to kill off the raiders. Villagers don't hire mercenaries or assassins. Adventurers, Tyra shrugged. Same thing. If someone kills someone that humans see as good, they're a murderer or an assassin. If they kill someone bad, they're an adventurer or a hero. The definition of good and bad can and will change based on what people want them to be. Humans love to pretty up everything in their favor. It's always someone else's fault, or whoever had stuff happen to them deserves it. Or whatever happened is horrible and that's why whoever did it to them deserves to be punished. It's ridiculous how predictable it all is. But you're a human too. Tyra smirked, her coral eyes glittering as if she found something funny in his words. Most people would call me a monster, she said, but yeah, I'm human too. I've been around and seen a lot, though. There's always some reason for any contract we're offered. He's corrupt. He betrayed me. She's not following the rules and no one's doing anything about it. She seduced my son. He kicked my dog. Everyone insists that the target deserves to die, and why? They don't care that we don't care, they're just trying to cope with their own crap. Whether a country plays games with a neighbor or plays it straight usually depends on the difference in power between them. The beastmen that raid the Draconic Kingdom play it straight. They're hungry. Your food. That's life. And humans play games because they're weak? Say asked. Pretty much, Tyra answered. If you don't present enough of a threat for the other guy to think you're not worth messing with, you gotta try something else. Since almost all humans are personally weak in the grand scheme of things, alternative avenues are readily embraced by us. Except, well, humans are also quick to push their advantages if they find that they're stronger than their opponents. The tattered glowing sails above them snapped lightly in the wind. They didn't need Tyra to tell them to know that what she said was true. After their parents died, no, even before then, they did whatever they could to survive. They begged in the streets, spied on people and picked through the town's trash piles every day. They watched thugs bow their heads to bigger thugs and then turn around and beat weaker people for everything that they owned. Their world was one where everyone lived in fear of everyone else. They were too small to care about, but not too small to be preyed upon. But Liam was sure that, even if he got strong enough, he wouldn't do all of the terrible things that he saw the adults do. After being saved from Facet County and seeing that people could be decent, Liam thought maybe he and his sister just had the bad luck to be born in some cruel and unusual hell. But the world wasn't so simple as that. What about trade? His sister asked. That's one of those alternative avenues, Tyra nodded. The most successful one. Countries love merchants because they circulate resources that the country wouldn't otherwise have access to. But, well, here's the problem. You got territory and that territory can support a certain population. Say you got land to raise 1 million nucks a year. You still need to be strong to convince everyone around you that it's better to trade than to raid. If you manage to do that, then they start competing for your trade. That doesn't sound so bad, Say said. For a time, maybe, Tyra replied. But the balance of power between all of those countries can shift suddenly. One country loses a hero or two and bam, they get gobbled up by their neighbors. All they can do is pray that it doesn't evolve into chaos from there. If it does, chances are that things went from a bunch of manageable countries to a few much more powerful countries. Then that food-producing country goes from a trade partner to a tributary. But if you've been friends for so long, Liam said, that should count for something. It might, Tyra admitted. It's not unusual to find countries that try to forge ties like that. But it's not a guarantee. Even if it happens, it just results in alliances of countries fighting other alliances of countries. Actually, it's usually a bunch of weak or middling countries banding together for security against a more powerful one. But ultimately, resources are limited. You grow so you can get more. If you don't, others do. Then they start sizing up all the ones that didn't grow. Then why not just stop having babies? Say asked, or keep the number of people the same? Then you don't have to look outward for resources. Doesn't work, Tyra shook her head. Every baby is potentially a soldier. Worse, every baby that you don't have might have been the next hero or at least someone decently strong. If a country was even with its aggressive neighbors before and it falls behind, that country is in for a bad time. But that means everyone is bound to fight and it never stops. Pretty much. Especially in this part of the world. Other places are more civilized, but it's probably not the civilized that people around here have in mind. Liam hadn't heard that before. He and Say had gone all the way to Roblé where the land ended and that country and its people seemed close enough to themselves. The Draconic Kingdom was just as far from the Sorceress Kingdom as Roblé was, so he didn't think it would be much different. But the Sorceress Kingdom can do it, Say said. We can stop the fighting. Our soldiers don't need to eat and no one can beat them. We can make a place where everyone can live peacefully. That's what the Sorcerer King wants, isn't it? Well, I wouldn't go so far as to say that no one can beat them, Tyra replied, but that's what our country claims it wants to do. If it helps you to get the job done, you're free to think that. You don't think it's true? Say asked. I'd like to, Tyra answered. But it's gonna take more than just a couple of months in some peaceful place to convince me. I've just seen too much to believe in anything easily. Then why are you so nice? Liam asked. Tyra raised an eyebrow. You think so? You are. You're always nice to everyone you work with. Even our parents didn't treat us this nice. Well, you ask me why, Tyra said. I'll ask you why not? Do you like being mean to people? Do you like it when everyone around you is an asshole? Is there just something wrong with everything you see so all you can do is be grumpy about life? Tyra straightened from the railing. She placed a hand on each of their shoulders and drew them close. Listen. We're assassins. A lot of people think that means we're just heartless killers. Maybe a lot of us pretend that we are. But we're not golems or mindless undead. We're humans. Think hard, Liam, say. We live and die in the shadows. Any of us can disappear at any moment. Even me. How would you rather things be? Who would you rather fight for? What sort of world do you want to see? You can love life, or you can hate it. The latter sucks. But if you're such a nice person, Say asked, then why did your sisters leave? You're thinking about it the wrong way, Tyra answered with a sad smile. It's because I love them that they aren't dead. The Grandmaster of Ijania released their shoulders and wandered off to chat with another group. Liam stared absently at the mist beyond the railing, which thinned out to reveal a broad river that flowed south to the sea. Tyra was right. Her sisters were supposed to be adamantite rank adventurers, but Tyra was in the realm of heroes. She had the rest of Ijania, too. There was no way her two runaway sisters could survive if she didn't want them to. Ruin's wake followed the river. It was supposed to be the same river that ran south of Erantal, until it fanned out into a broad delta and joined the sea. From there, the ghost ship sailed along the eastern shore until the lights of a city appeared on the horizon. That must be Blighthold, Say said. How do you know that? Liam frowned. Because I studied. You need to stop failing that test, by the way. How did you know about that? You didn't say anything about it. If you passed, you'd tell me right away. I bet you felt better about yourself when you saw that Vicar Aspasia and Sister Alessia failed their test too. He turned away. Say was way too good at reading people. They sailed into a port city about a third the size of Rimune. The city was asleep, but 4 dozen men waited at the pier. It took them a minute to board through the hole in the ghost ship's side. Ruin's wake sailed off again. Tyra went to stand in the middle of the main deck, waiting for the men to come up and join them. Liam narrowed his eyes at their appearance. They looked like thugs from Facet Town. Most were in laborers' outfits while a few were better dressed. If it worked the way that he knew, Liam could tell who was who at a glance. The two groups eyed one another as if sizing each member up. After several moments, one of the better-dressed men stepped forward. Then he and his men jumped back when an elder lich appeared. Iska, the elder lich said. Captain of Ruin's Wake. Welcome aboard. The new passengers blinked at Captain Iska. After a couple of seconds, the well-dressed man stepped forward again. Ikut balik, he said. Tyra. Tyra smiled and waved. The newcomers only stared back with straight faces and crossed arms, feet planted firmly on the deck. Yup, they're thugs. They had a way about them that screamed goon. Image came first. 999 times out of 1,000, having a lot of men looking big, tough and confident was enough to make everyone else fall in line. And when they fell in line, they stayed there. The one person that refused to fall in line was beaten down or killed as a warning to the rest. Ikut and his men were trying to establish their dominance over Ijania, which wasn't the brightest of ideas. Not that they knew. Ninjas were expert infiltrators and assassins were masters of disguise. Their expertise allowed them not only to use what people thought of as stealth. They could also impersonate others and conceal their strength to avoid being casually profiled by security forces. Only those with sufficient detection abilities could see through them. Tyra continued to smile, but something about that smile started to unnerve Liam. I'm human too. Were Tyra and her men doing it on purpose? Waiting for a reason to put some cocky thugs in their place? Liam went still as the tension in the air grew thick enough to cut with a knife. This some sort of human ritual? Iska asked. Sorry, I join in, but I'd scare 2/3 of you overboard. The Baroness may get upset with me if I do that. I could sighed. Where's Zaradnik? He asked. Fighting a war, the elder lich answered. Lady Zaradnik will join us when we enter the Bay of Oars. That's about 2 hours from now. Her instructions in the meantime are to get yourselves sorted out. What does sorting ourselves out entail? Tyra asked. Captain Iska pulled a note out of his breast pocket. He held it out between Tyra and Ikut. Ikut leaned forward to read it in the darkness. Tyra remained where she was. Let's get Belladex, she told her men. Bring our cargo up from the hold. Whoever finds a black bag, bring it to that table on the tween deck. The ninjas melted into the shadows around the deck. Ikut and his men stood blinking at their sudden disappearance. Say didn't waste any time, heading over to the ladder. Liam followed her down. They caught up to Tyra, who was already emptying the aforementioned black bag on the rectangular table in front of her. "Roll out that map, will ya?" Tyra said. Say moved to take the map while Liam looked for something to hold down the corners. In the end, he used 4 small pouches of coins out of a row of pouches on the table. One of the ninjas, a man named Pon, came over with Ikut and several other upper-rank thugs. "Working for this country sure is different, boss," Pon said. "Tell me about it." Tyra flipped through a thin black binder. "I wonder if every big job will be like this. Let's see." She leafed back to the front of the binder, placing it on the table to the side of the map. "Says here that you sent men ahead to Helama. With luck, they'll be waiting for us near the wharf gate." "This one," Ikut pointed at the western gate along the riverfront. "They should have volunteered for the night watch, so they'll be the militia manning the gatehouse." "What's this other gate?" "The ferry gate." "Mkai, their instructions were to contact the Suna family and secure a safe house. I have no idea how hard any of this might have been to accomplish. If things in Helama are anything like Blighthold," Ikut said, "everything should be ready for our arrival." "What was it like in Blighthold?" Tyra asked. "The beastmen lived in the countryside, raiding for food when required. Otherwise, they stayed in the settlements they made in the copses. It's easy for humans to get around. Our people shouldn't have been detected at all." One of the lessons that Liam and Say learned early on was how hard it was for security forces to detect infiltrators. Trying to sneak by a member of the city militia in a narrow lane or hallway was difficult, but no one had so many people that they could make it just as hard to travel across the countryside. Running into anyone at all in rural lands was unlikely unless one purposely traveled on roads and other areas that saw local traffic. The only real threat in that situation was being chased around by a ranger or something else of similar leanings. In that case, the infiltrator was in for a rough time. "What would happen if they got caught?" Tyra asked. "Any beastman out in the open is likely to be on the hunt," Ikut answered. "If our men were somehow caught, it would be a fight for their lives." "So they wouldn't be questioned or anything like that?" "No," Ikut's voice was firm. "We give as little as possible to invaders. There is no point in quietly going along with a prowling beastman when one knows that they will get eaten shortly after." Tyra crossed her arms, pursing her lips as she studied the map of the city. Liam thought he knew what she was thinking. If Ikut and his men were any indication, the people that they sent to Helama weren't very strong. All of them were stronger than Liam and Say, but nowhere close to the ninjas dispatched with Tyra. The thugs were silver rank, at best. Probably rogues like Liam. Silver rank rogues weren't so physically strong that they couldn't be subdued by a group of beastmen. Magic that affected the mind and body was a problem for rogues, as well. A beastman looking for food would probably eat first and not think of questioning their prey, but all it took was a bit of suspicion. Charming one of Ikut's men would reveal everything. "How strong are the beastmen?" Liam asked. "It tells us what the royal armies run into so far here." Tyra tapped the binder. "Mostly civilians around difficulty rank 30. It mentions that there are tribes or clans made out of warriors, but they've barely encountered any so far. Got anything on these warriors, Ikut?" "Warriors were common enough during the beastmen's advance," the man replied. "They became rarer over time. After the last adventurers and soldiers defending our city were killed, the beastman warriors disappeared as well." "Well, that's convenient. Let's get all these supplies distributed before Zaradnik drops in to brief us." Tyra placed an arm over Say's shoulder and headed to the after ruins wake. Liam went out into the tween deck, finding his pile of stuff and changing into his equipment. Over his shirt and pants, he wore a jack of plate with a base of matching material. Leather gloves and steel braces went over his hands and forearms. He had a new pair of leather boots since his old ones were getting tight. Steel greaves went over his boots. Liam fitted his black cloth mask and tied on a metal headband, then sheathed 2 daggers behind his back. 2 knives went into his greaves and 6 kunai went under his braces. Liam walked around, testing his mobility. All of the equipment combined weighed about 8 kilograms. It felt heavy, but his trainers said that it would feel as light as a gambesine before long. "You look like a precocious little fuck." He turned at the sound of Pon's voice. "Weren't you the one who told me to get all of this?" "Doesn't change what I said," Pon replied. The ninja was in traditional Ijaniya garb, which covered him from head to toe in pitch black cloth. He wore a black metal breastplate and sported black gauntlets and bracers. A belt with loops and pouches dangled from his hand. "What's that?" Liam asked. "Bandolier. Did you see all the stuff they packed off with us?" Liam shook his head. Pon went over and grabbed a bandolier from one of the crates, tossing it over to him. Someone clapped their hands nearby. "All right, boys, gather round." Tyro stood at the mainmast with Sei. Both of them had changed into their equipment. Tyra was in mostly the same garb as the other ninjas, though her stuff was fitted for a woman. A chain shirt peeked out from under Sei's leather vest. "Listen good, 'cause I don't wanna repeat this long-ass list." Tyra waved the black binder in her hand. "Actually, forget that. Bring one of them boxes over here." One of the ninjas picked up a crate and placed it at Tyra's feet. Sei opened the cover and pulled out a vial filled with blue liquid. "Middle cure wounds," his sister said. A low murmur rose from the gathered men. Potions imbued with second-tier spells were expensive. The ones selling in Erantal were going for 8 Riastais gold coins each. "Middle cure wounds," Tyra murmured as her eyes scanned the binder. "Each person gets 3. You sure about that, boss?" That's what it says here. I'm not crazy, right?" She held out the binder for Sei to look at. "No," Sei said. "If you break one," Tyra said, "you won't get another. Says there should be 2 crates of these, so find the other one." The men formed a line. Sei passed out the potions. Liam slid his vials into a small leather case on the bandolier with loops inside. "Light cure wounds," Sei examined a scroll from the next crate. 6 light cure wounds scrolls each, Tyra read off the page. Once Liam received his scrolls, he placed them into another leather case just big enough to stick them all in. In addition to the healing items, they received 2 minor bark skin potions, 2 potions of reinforce armor, 2 potions of cure poison, 1 potion of lesser strength, 1 potion of lesser dexterity and 1 scroll of fly. In addition, they received several vials of potent venom. "This last crate here is for team leaders. We're splitting up into groups of 6 for this job. Each team leader gets 4 silence scrolls, 2 message scrolls, 6 lesser restoration scrolls, 6 invisibility scrolls and 6 extra potions of middle cure wounds. Also, a box of junk." "Junk?" I could frowned. "Stuff for traps." "What about these other crates here?" someone asked. "Those are supplies for the safe house. 3 of them are for Sei." 6 dozen gazes turned to his sister. "Me?" she said. "The safe house is doubling as a field hospital. Looks like we're gonna be doing a lot of fighting. On a related note, if you're not familiar with using this venom that we got, I'd suggest you leave it for someone that does. They gave us some good stuff, but the last thing we need is someone killing themselves with it." Roughly half of Ikut's men returned the vials of venom. Liam wrapped the bandolier over his belt, shifting his daggers so he could pull them out from under it. He went over to join Sei, who was going over her inventories. The crates assigned to her were filled with even more restoratives as well as some magic items of unknown use. "They're not letting you fight," Liam said. "It's better like this anyway," Sei replied. "And it's not like I wanted to fight." "Why did they give us so much stuff?" "Because it is better to have and not need," a woman's voice came from behind him, "than it is to need and not have." He jumped at the new voice, as did 3/4 of the room. Liam turned to find Baroness Saradnik, shrouded in a forest green cowl and mantle. "Are you all sorted out?" she asked. "It's 4 hours to dawn." "As far as what we've been given," Tyra answered. "Then I'll get right to your task," Lady Zaradnik said. "The Beastman clans in the area are rallying around Helama. Instead of spending the next week or so chasing them across the Forced River, we'll be taking care of them here. Over the next 2 days, upwards of 80,000 beastmen will arrive." The few whispers drifting around the deck fell silent. Ikut's men stared incredulously at the Baroness. We can't fight 80,000 beastmen," Ikut said. "I thought we were sent to help clear the city, not defend it." "You are still here to clear the city," Lady Zaradnik told him. "Right now, only a portion of the beastmen, those camping outside Helama previously, are inside the city walls. Your tasks are as follows. First, get in touch with the Suna family and move into the safe house they've prepared for you. You'll rest until nightfall while familiarizing yourselves with the city. Once night comes, you're to seal the gates and clear the walls. After that, exterminate the beastmen trapped inside. How many beastmen are there in the city? Tyra asked. No more than 6,000, Lady Zaradnik answered. And what are the conditions? There must be something if you're not just crushing everything here with the undead. Minimizing collateral damage to the Draconic Kingdom's citizens, the Baroness replied. The Royal Army will do all the work out on the field, but we don't want beastmen holing up in the city while we do that. This operation is also a primer for your people. We still have half the Draconic Kingdom to liberate and you'll be working on the next city after this. New orders will arrive once things settle down in Helama. Fair enough, Tyra said, then looked out at the gathering with a grin. You heard the lady, we got some work to do.